Hi, I'm Ajay Banerjee, Deputy Editor of the Tribune at New Delhi. Today we are discussing an important aspect. The Ministry of Defence in India announced that its defence production of India now stood at 100.78 lakh crores. To put it in perspective, that is around $20 billion. It is a fourfold jump in the past 12 years or since the Modi government came to power in 2014. And 12 years ago, I read out some numbers. The defence production of India, collective defence production, was around 43,746 crores. Now, this announcement made today means that India produced defence equipment worth 1.78 lakh crores. That is almost 4 times of what was being done 12 years ago. It's a quantum jump. I'll read out a few more numbers to lay into perspective. However, before that, India still remains the world's second largest importer of weapons and equipment. A latest report by SIPRI, that is the Stockholm International Peace Institute, in March this year, said that India still imported 8.3% of all global arms sales between a 5-year period from 2021 to 2025. I will bring you down there, but first of all, the good news. The big defense production numbers which have come out today also means that India's Atmanirbharta, or self-reliance as India calls it, has grown. Its dependence on foreign suppliers remains and will remain. That's a give and take because some of the critical technologies continue to be imported. However, India is making planes, India is making warships, nuclear submarines, even an aircraft carrier, artillery guns, rockets, systems, missiles. However, India still needs to import aero engines, marine engines, and some technologies like the S-400 air defense missiles from Russia. All of these don't come from Russia. The aero engines, some of them come from US, some of them are in partnership with France, and the marine engines come largely from US, the General Electric company. Now, to put it in perspective, the Indian annual defense production this year had a share of around 76% of defense public sector undertakings. There are around 16 defense public sector undertakings. Most of them cater largely to the defense equipment market in India and also abroad. Large part of this, 24% of this number, was contributed by the private sector in India. Now, this is very important because the private sector has to grow if India wants to be a major player in the global defense equipment market. Coming back to the numbers where we stand at the moment and how we have reached here, how India has reached here specifically. India reached here because of policy changes when around 5-6 years ago, pre-COVID times, the government of India said there will be no more imports of certain items. It was called the indigenization list. Now, this list runs into hundreds and thousands of parts which are no more imported and they are to be made in India. This includes spare parts for aircrafts, warships, some equipment which was being imported, avionics, sensors, even missile seekers. These are no more being imported. A radar for the fighter jets is coming up. The DRDO has tested it out. So in the future, the radar will also not be imported from, at the moment we were importing from Israel for our own domestic production, whereas the Rafale or the Russian jets came with their own radars. So they were largely imported. Now that part will also be covered. Excuse me. The defense equipment production has seen a 110% increase in the past 5 years. It was stood at around 84,643 crores in the year 2020 and 2021. That's financial years we are referring to. Now, the big point is that India moves, where does India move from here? Now, for the next 5-10 years, there has to be a huge focus on R&D, research and development. The Ministry of Defence has a R&D budget largely given to the public sector units, and also some of it is given to the private players also in partnership when they do R&D. R&D has to be the focus. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has made it very clear in the past few times that R&D has to be the focus if we have to grow. R&D has to be done for aero engines, for marine engines and several other aspects, including how to stop satellite signals and all that stuff, which is slowly coming up. Also, for the first time, India has, last month, given out a tender to the street private players to design a prototype of the 5th generation fighter aircraft called the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, or the AMCA. These are the changes which are happening, but still we remain a second largest importer. We will remain that for the next 5, 7, 10 years. I believe so, because these things have to be imported, but still the good news is that these numbers which have grown in terms of defense production in exports, the exports last fiscal stood at 38,424 crores. Now, these exports are largely also geopolitical in nature. Some of the exports of the BrahMos have gone to Vietnam, Indonesia and Philippines. All of them border the South China Sea, the disputed waters of the South China Sea. At least 2 of the countries, Vietnam and Philippines, are part of the South China dispute with China. And also some of the equipment has gone to countries like Armenia, Cyprus, and works with Greece, all 3 neighboring Turkey, which has also to send a strategic signal, since Turkey stood along Pakistan, even sent its own engineers to operate drones during Operation Sindoor in May last year. These are the positive developments, but we have to keep in mind that these are long-term gestation projects. We will keep on updating the story for you. With me is Manas Ranjan, Tribune's photographer.